I'm really sorry. I can't be there in Cincinnati with you for a lot of reasons. I was born and raised in Cincinnati. And when you were last in Cincinnati, I was there and met so many of you. And, uh, it's one of the best gatherings that I, I've attended recently. And I sample a lot of gatherings, believe me, and not all of them are inspired, but Conspire is inspired, and so I, um, I wish I were there. But at any rate, I thought I might reflect on the question of having people together in small groups and maybe think with you about the powerful possibilities of being small. One of the things that struck me when I was there in Cincinnati with you before was an awful lot of you are in a world where things are not large. And so that sometimes makes people feel they're not of too much consequence. And I think the reverse. In my experience, the bigger something is, the more misleading it will be because it begins to be not the voice of people, but the voice of something called an institution. And institutions are built on the premise that what we want to do is create something that goes on regardless of the people who are in it. It isn't the people who are important, it's the institution. And so I think that when we think about smallness, we are really thinking about the world of the personal. Why do we want to have a world that is personal? I think the basic reason is that if you think about a neighborhood, for instance, who's there is residents. But if they begin to connect personally, they can become neighbors. And as that personal set of relationships grows, they can become friends. And as friendship then begins to be the convening principle in their lives, they are creating two things: a community of faith and trust in each other. And the second, the recognition that what they have to offer each other is themselves. And what themselves is, in practical purposes, is the fact that everyone has gifts and everyone has skills and passions and knowledge. And that is the rich set of assets that allows people to create something that is a culture of contribution, that manifests their way and moves them out of the culture of consumption, which says, buy your life, it's out there. But when we keep ourselves small enough to know each other, then we understand that we create a life together because we are able to bring together all of our gifts. So the threat to the small community of trust, faith, and contribution is scaling up. I always, when I hear people from agencies, organizations say, we're going to roll it out next Tuesday, I know it'll fail. I know it'll be of no consequence. So I always think we should be very, very leery of trying to grow big. And the reason for that is that if we don't know each other and all that we have to contribute, then we go bigger and bigger because more and more of us know less and less about each of us. We then delegate the essence of our personal relationship to the pastor. And the pastor, we say, well, he knows everybody here, right? And once everybody thinks that what holds them together is the pastor, then we are on the way to institutionalization. So, in order to be the church, it seems to me that we need to be just zealous in our commitment to being small enough that we can be knowledgeable about each of us personally, knowledgeable about each of our gifts. And if we begin to get too big, maybe what we ought to do is start a second group, because the scale is going to slowly deteriorate our mutual capacity to be a community of faith. Now, another thing that we ought to remember about being small is that every movement is the making visible of thousands of small groups of people. I can remember when the civil rights movement developed. I'm that old. And a woman sat down in the back of a bus in Alabama, and all of a sudden 10, 20, 30,000 groups, small groups, became visible, and we called it a movement. But we were all small, and we acted in faith. And then the revelation became our public knowledge that together we now had great power. So every movement is made up of the atoms of small groups of faithful, committed people. And the molecule that comes forward when it is triggered by a woman named Rosa Parks. So live like you're in a movement. And if it isn't visible, be a movement, be a part of it. It will come one day. It will come to be visible. So that now you are as a circle of friends, two or more gathered in his name. And there are thousands and thousands like you, some with a religious identity, many with other kinds of identities, but all with a vision of the heavenly city, right? And as you work, know that you are surrounded, right, by all of those who want that same heavenly city to be. And you can't institutionalize it, but what can happen is the revelation to all of you that you are, in fact, a movement, which is the most powerful change agent. Institutions don't change the world. Movements change the world. Look, I'm an old guy, and I remember the huge change to the civil rights movement. the huge change of the environmental movement, the huge change of the women's movement and the Me Too movement, the huge change of the LGBT movement. All of this was at one time invisible. But the day came, I think maybe God revealed the power of all of us to each of us. And then real change, change that no institution could ever create. Each of these changes is creating, I think, a culture of contribution. The recognition in every case that each of us has something to give. The civil rights struggle was a struggle, one might say, for freedom, but I would say for the equality of power to contribute. So everybody we know at the edge, right, is waiting to contribute. And the invitation is at the heart of that welcome into our small community. I know each of you understand the importance of the welcome. There's a word for it, hospitality. The heart of every small community is manifested by hospitality. Come on in. Come in. We need you. You have so much to offer. How did I ever live without you? So conspire on, you great conspirators.